Hello, and Scott McKenzie here with founder and CEO with home care agency Blueprint. I'm back with Peter today to go over module 3 in my course for we covered the beginning of module 3 last week, and today we're going to go over the technology side of the module. So we're going to be talking about all of the technology that you will need to know about to run your very own home care agency. And Peter has connected with us today to ask some questions. He's going to be sharing his screen, and he has created a map on all the different technology inside of running a home care agency based off of the course. And yeah, we're going to just talk about it, and we will go ahead and get started. So thanks again, Peter, for being here today. And I'm looking forward to this session here.
All right, good. I'll share my screen here. So what I have done, because this is just how my mind works, is I put together kind of from front end to back end, getting people in the front door to getting them invoiced and taken care of, kind of how data flows and the different tools that I've learned by studying the course along the way. And yeah, I got various questions. So I think the best is let's just start on the left and go to the right, and you can ad lib and add some comments along the side. So
Yep.
let's talk about getting clients in the door. I mean, mainly it's through website ads. Maybe they're going to call you. We got this dialpad.com solution, obviously, is the front end of for all handling all phone calls. Anything you want to say about your experiences with Dialpad?
Yeah, so Dialpad, for those of you that are unfamiliar with what Dialpad is, it's a VoIP, which stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. And essentially, that's just a fancy name for a cloud-based phone system that allows you to be able to use your business phone number in a cloud where you can then set up like a separate phone number where you can route that to different departments as your agency grows. But that's basically getting your own agency phone number set up. So that's what Dialpad is, just one of many VoIPs out there. There's a ton of them. That's just one that I recommend. It uses some AI built in there. It bounces off your own phone network as well as using your data. So essentially, you download Dialpad in an app on your phone, and then that is your business phone number that you can call out of. And then you can add more phone numbers in more departments as your agency grows. So say once you get a case manager and you want them to have their own Dialpad phone number, you basically can create an additional like local phone number for them, and just route proper departments. And then just say you get a billing department, create a phone number for that, and then that will be a separate person handling the billing stuff. And then that's where you can create basically like a phone tree. So when people call in, it could be press 1 for, say, new client, press 2 for current client, 3 for caregivers, 4 for applying, and then you can have a different phone number for each department, and then a separate remote worker that can be handling that. And or say it is just your office employees, they'll just have that phone number on their phone. So yeah, that's kind of like a long-winded answer on how we use Dialpad at Golden Age Companions. And yeah, it works really great. But it's essentially a VoIP system. So
And you were able to use that for SMS texting to
yes,
caregivers,
uh,
coordinate and stuff like
yeah.
that.
There's a it's called the AP2 approval process that it's like regulated. So you do need to get an approval and have a special privacy policy on your website to be able to send out text messages. That's just across the board for any VoIP. And yeah, we help you here at Home Care Agency Blueprint. We do assist in getting that done for you. But yeah, it's basically just making sure that you're legit and you're sending out proper text messages and people are consenting and you're not just blasting spam text off to people. But
Got
yeah,
it.
like we had our staffing coordinator, our case manager, that's how they communicated and recruited our caregivers, was via texting off Dialpad, which also can be downloaded on as a desktop app too, so you can text right off your computer.
Nice. That
Mm.
sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then in terms of getting caregivers in the door, Hireology was one that you mentioned. I guess that's a tool you can talk more about in a second that goes out to multiple job sites for caregivers. And then you were using Upwork if you wanted to hire VAs. Those were the two primary tools that you were using.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Well said. So Hireology, think of that as your platform for hiring mainly your caregivers and or in-office staff. So this is like local people, like you need to get a case manager or someone to go do in-home assessments, or a marketer as you grow. You want to hire a marketer to nurture those relationships and go to facilities. So that's what Hireology, and the main thing it's used for is caregiver hiring. In the world of running a home care agency, you always want to have job ads posted online all the time, different zip codes, different variations, to be sure that you're constantly getting a flow of applicants in, because that's what this business is, right? You want to be able to choose from a high amount of applicants so you can get the most quality caregiver to be able to match with that client once when you start onboarding more and more clients. So like the way that I always teach to use Hireology is to have multiple ads up, and like for example, like a part-time job posting, a full-time job posting, maybe a few job postings that are in different zip codes of the county that you are operating in. And just sometimes we even, like, if we're staffing a really big case that's like say 12 hours, 7 days a week, or a challenging case, we will actually create like a template posting and then write up about that case. Obviously, for HIPAA law, you can't write the name or address or anything of the person, but you can have it like be a generic, this is a hospice client. This is, you know, around what age they are. This is like really their, the activities of daily living that they need to have. And this is their personality. Like we've even done that, like really made like one specific ad specific for that client if we're like looking to staff a big case or we're having a challenge staffing it. And then what that ends up doing is it attracts that caregiver that resonates with your job posting and resonates with that client too. It's just it's more work than just throwing up a generic job
Yeah.
posting. I know most of these big job board companies like Hireology, ZipRecruiter is a really big one too. They're a little more pricey than Hireology, but yeah, I know they always talk about like just put up a generic ad. I've never agreed with that. Like I'm telling you, like it hasn't worked as well as doing specific ads if you really take the time. Um, Obviously you don't want 30 or 40 ads up there that are just all different, but I'm just saying if you have a few specific ones, then and then some generic ones, then you'll get like a flow of different applicants to basically choose from. And then Upwork, that is for your virtual, basically your remote workers. So anybody that can work from home or from the computer. The way Upwork works is you can actually choose which countries to post your job posting in. That could be, US, or it could be the world. It doesn't, or specific countries. But yeah, this is like any data entry stuff, or anything that's not handling like personal or sensitive information. That's what I recommend to. And I do talk about that in my course there also on, like how to divide up, like, okay, when do I know to hire an office, like an in-office worker, and can that job be outsourced and or just hired remote? Because that's going to save you some money. So, and plus it's more efficient, but like for Upwork, like something that could be done is like, you could train someone to consistently refresh job postings. For example, like on Hireology, that can be a remote worker doing that. Maybe it could be quality control. Maybe it could just be somebody specific to call in and check on your clients and just do like kind of a wellness check type of thing. Maybe even like surveys, like just getting feedback from the clients, feedback from the caregivers. Those are really good things to like assign to a remote worker to keep the quality of your care high. So.
Nice. Yeah, no, I put Upwork down here in the corner too, in the lower right corner, because I know you mentioned that's how you would, they actually record their hours there and you pay them through that system.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so the way Upwork works is you hire the employee through there and then they track their hours. The way it works is they have a system, Upwork does, where it'll actually take various screenshots of their screen as they're clocked in working for you, and then it'll monitor how much you're, pushing buttons on the keyboard and clicking the mouse. And if after like 10 seconds there's no inactivity, it'll clock the person out. So it's making sure that they're actually working and these people aren't, because that's the biggest question I get is like,
Yeah.
hey Scott, like I don't trust hiring remote workers. Like, what if they just like clock in and leave the computer on for 6 hours and they're billing me for it and they just do like 30 minutes of work, and that's the beauty of Upwork. That's what's really nice about using
Yeah.
Upwork is it has that. And then they take 20% out of the salary of the person that's being paid. So generally you'd want to pay um a little bit more than like what you'd pay like a private VA because they want to compensate for that they're getting taken out of their check.
Got it. So back to Hireology for a second, question on that. So I get like creating a very specific profile on an existing client that needs specific help. That makes sense to me. Did you ever create like a avatar client profile that maybe didn't exist, but you knew you got a lot of to make it a little more personal?
Yeah, sometimes we'll even leave up like that would turn into the avatar posting as like a post that got a lot of views or a lot of applicants, and once we fill that case, we might leave that job posting live because it serves two purposes. One is if we're getting a high amount of clients in that geographic area, we want to keep sourcing from that area. And two, if it's a big case, meaning like say it's two 12-hour shifts, a daytime and a nighttime around the clock, you're really looking at staffing that case with 4 caregivers, really 5 or 6 because you want to have a backup. When you
Yeah.
have these transitions, that's a bunch of what's up, 14 transitions in a week. So
Yeah.
you're bound to have someone call out late, can't show up or whatever. And
Yeah.
you always want to have a backup. So, and then if someone needs to be replaced, if you have that job posting up there, then you already know where to go to look for more applicants for that case specifically.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's go down to the lower left here. These aren't necessarily systems per se, but you're going to get referrals in and you're going to get job applications in. Now, were the job apps that you were getting in like electronic that flowed into your system somehow, or how did you handle job applications?
Yeah, really good question. So the way that we have kind of like I've perfected the system with Golden Age Companions, and that's what we teach with Home Care Agency Blueprint, is basically Hireology links inside of WellSky. There's actually an open API integration. So inside of WellSky, well, for those of you that are watching this, we'll talk about WellSky later in the video, but essentially that's your CRM platform. That's your scheduling platform where you schedule the caregivers and your clients go in there with the care plans, et cetera, et cetera. So WellSky also serves as a platform to have applicants that can be funneled. You can add an applicant like separately, or they could be automatically funneled as someone posts inside of Hireology. Then they could be pushed into WellSky as an applicant, and then you can review either in Hireology, you can vet that person, or often what happens is you end up hiring somebody automatically through Hireology, and then you just jump into WellSky, convert them to a caregiver, and then finish the onboarding process with them. One thing that I meant to mention with Hireology is the beauty with them is they're around $250 a month with a 6-month agreement, and they they basically post like over 100 different job boards, which is like phenomenal value. And they have a very, very, very good system on how to track the caregivers, and like it's applicant tracking. They have that built in there. But for simplicity, what really ends up happening is you have all these applicants that are pushed into WellSky, and then you can go through either there or Hireology. If you really like, that's where a VA, a remote worker, would be very beneficial to hire for, is to get somebody to literally be going through all the applicants inside of Hireology and then like cross-checking them inside of WellSky. Because what will end up happening is if you're going through Hireology and like pre-vetting everybody and even checking off all the boxes that Hireology says, like, hey, this is how you can pre-screen people. That's not going to reflect into WellSky. It'll just still like live there as an applicant. And then you're going to all of a sudden have hundreds or even thousands of applicants inside of WellSky where you're like, okay, I don't know what the update is on all of these. So they don't communicate directly in that way, but it is really nice because like when you hire someone in Hireology, it's very easy just to search their name in WellSky and then just pop them in as a caregiver and then finish the hiring process.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I didn't know there was a direct connect there. So one of the big things in the middle here I've been wrestling with, so we'll probably spend a little time talking about this. So I realize I'm going to get, like you just were saying, I'm going to get a bunch of applicants. I'm not going to hire them all. I got to track them somehow. I'm going to get referrals for clients from other people. I got to track them somehow. I might get paid leads. I got to track them somehow. Um, I have all this flowing into WellSky, but I also have this cloud question mark here is like, should you be fronting those with a CRM so they don't all go into WellSky until you are sure that's going to be a booked client, or do you shove them all into WellSky? It's like, what's the best practice there?
Yeah, so as far as bringing on, um, all right, so the best way that I know as far as like use case that I've always done it with Golden Age Companions is that's where we had Monday.com, where that's where like the leads that needed to be nurtured and followed up with, and maybe they'd go into like an email campaign would be inside of Monday.com, and all that communication before they're even a client would happen there. And then they'd be pushed over to WellSky once when they're basically converted as a client and that in-home assessment happens. Now, there's as the saying goes, there's all kinds of ways to skin a cat, right? So like
Right.
other people use it where they really use WellSky to get most bang for buck out of the system. They actually go into WellSky, they add every single say applicant or like because you can add a prospect inside of WellSky and then you could be
Yeah.
tracking the follow-ups, and there's a place where you can mark like the activity, like who called that prospect last and what the update is. I liked using Monday because having, we had at one point 5 or 6 remote workers. um
Yeah.
it was just a little easier to communicate than jumping because I can get push notifications right on my phone. Where WellSky, you really have to be like logging in the computer and like looking at
Mm.
what updates are and stuff. That's just personal experience. But everybody works a little bit differently. I mean, WellSky serves a purpose. I mean, there is a tool in there to just only add them as a prospect, and then you can make updates until they get converted. When the in-home assessment happens, then you convert them to a client, and then you finish building out the care plan, and then that's where you can schedule care.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. That I like your point about messaging. That's an important one. So I'm probably going to look at putting a CRM, some kind of CRM in here, whether it's Monday or I know we talked about a number of different ones. So something TBD.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but then back to hiring caregivers, they ultimately need to get into Bands of Hands. So maybe Bands of Hands has its own system that you got to log into and put all your caregivers in there too. So you want to explain that?
Yep. So Bands of Hands is essentially it's similar. It's not a PEO, but it's similar to a PEO is also called a professional employer organization. So that's essentially they're basically taking on the liability of your employee in full. So the way that they work is when you have a caregiver that you're hiring, you have your internal process on like educating that caregiver on the culture and maybe what specific license requirements are in your state that you need to comply with is separate. But then all the like labor regulations and just like all those policies on basically having an employee, Bands of Hands handles, and they onboard electronically. They'll make sure that that employee fills out all the paperwork that they need to fill out, and they'll keep up on top of that. They also have a legal team that will help essentially like go to bat for you. Heaven forbid you ever have like a legal issue of an employee that files something against your company. That's really beneficial. The other thing that we teach in Home Care Agency Blueprint is ADP. So ADP is a payroll. Most people know ADP. They do payroll processing. They also can couple your workers' compensation insurance, which Bands of Hands actually does that too. But ADP will bring in your workers' comp, and then in WellSky you can export all of your payroll. There's a direct integration off to ADP, and they essentially process your payroll. And then they have an HR component also that is kind of similar to Bands of Hands, but it's more hands-on from your side. There's more responsibility for you to follow up on those HR forms and things that they need to be filling out and updating. So it's kind of like preference. A lot of people go, "Oh, Bands of Hands is like the best thing ever. Like that's a clear winner." Well, sometimes ADP and HR component work better for people. I think ADP with HR, if you want to walk before you run type of thing, isn't a bad thing to get started with. And then as you grow and get a little bit bigger, Hands is an option too. Um, yeah, I mean, I like both. They work both like well for each person, that depending on like what you're looking to go with. I do know ADP also has like a legal team and whatnot. Like they have an upgrade HR side that they can protect you when and if something like that shows up. I will just say, like, as you know, Peter, you know me well enough, but for those of you that watching, like, I'm a super transparent person. I don't talk about like, oh, home care is like, it is an amazing business to be in, but just like any business, there's different things that you gotta like watch out for, and there's risks that do come involved. And it's really important to protect yourself and make sure that you structure your business properly so you can mitigate anything that might arise. Because I'm not here to tell you, oh, you're never gonna have a lawsuit, or you're never gonna have a disgruntled caregiver that's gonna go file something, which they could literally make up some. I mean, over here in California, it's a very litigious state. So an employee can literally say anything and like file a lawsuit. So as long as you have all of your paperwork, like your employee onboarding documents structured and everything is organized and well, like manicured, then you're not going to have an issue at all when it comes to that. Because heaven forbid, if you ever did get, some type of filing, like if you showed all the paperwork that you have on that employee, it just goes away right away. Whereas like if you're doing things, if you're missing out on certain whatever, if you're just operating not the way you should be or whatever, then yeah, like a lawyer could find reasons to go after you type of things. So not to scare anybody, but I'm just being,
Yeah.
and really in 12 years, like Golden Age Companions, we had a couple things, but they weren't anything like major. And I'm really proud to say that, because I know a lot of home care agencies that are just very disorganized, they're getting multiple lawsuits a year. And I think it's because they just don't know what they're doing. And yeah, so that's just something to like think about.
So interesting how you characterized ADP versus Bands of Hands, because I was thinking about it the exact opposite way that you thought you talked it through. Because early on, when I'm getting started, I don't even want to think about HR stuff. I want to focus on revenue generating activities and just know that that piece of the business is getting handled. Where when I grow and I have a lot more income, I could maybe bring on and somebody to just handle HR. It would probably drop my costs down a little bit, right? So that's the way I've been thinking about it. Any comment there?
Yeah, that's a good way. I mean, that's a good point. You could do it that way. The only reason why I say to do ADP ahead of time is just I feel like it's a little easier. I mean, Bands of Hands is pretty easy onboarding process. I guess the reason why I think it in that way is once when you get past like 20 caregivers, you either need an HR person or you need like someone like Bands of Hands, because it's very easy to manage onboarding the caregivers, getting their paperwork filled out when you have the first 5, 8, 10, 15.
Yeah.
It's easy. I mean, I did it. I know for Golden Age Companions, I handled all of the HR stuff up to like 18, 19 clients. And it
Mm.
was easy. I get once when I place the caregivers on a case, I know they're okay, caregiver A, they're good to go. I don't need to deal with their file for 6 months or whatever. Making sure payroll's getting processed properly. That's just a routine maintenance thing. So I don't really feel like there's a need to have like this robust like HR system, because I could really kind of handle it. But I mean, you have a good point there, Peter, because like even that still takes some time. It still takes some mental bandwidth to deal with that. And if you have bands of hands up front, then you could really go like to bat as far as like the marketing and really just focus on those activities. And
Yeah.
I agree with that too. I think it depends on your personality and like how you kind of want to structure it.
Yeah. I hate HR stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll just, all right. So before we jump into WellSky, because that's a big deep hole, let's talk about some of the stuff I got up here.
Yeah.
Um, just some of the tools I'm thinking about using, setting up, I was doing the module on creating your, content management system for training your employees. And I have Kajabi. I'm going to use that. I don't think it's for everybody. It's not inexpensive. Slack for just communication, Loom for creating quick videos, Follower AI, I guess, for getting social media out. Those are some of the kind of miscellaneous tools that I have my little staff people here running. But what do you
Yeah.
guys say about that tool stack over there?
So follower AI helps you basically just create like social media content. You really want to focus on sitting down as a business owner, and like something at Home Care Agency Blueprint that I'm like really proud of is like our branding department. So we make sure that you really have a solid brand identity ahead of time, before like launching your business. And given that there's enough solid copy there, you can create that copy and turn it into a lot of social media posts. And that's what follower AI does, is you can make, say, schedule out, say, 3 posts a week. And then what I highly recommend doing just from a business owner time management standpoint is, even if you can carve out 30 minutes a week, if you're willing to sit down for 2 or 3 hours, like once every 6 weeks, you could probably create enough content 3 times a week and schedule it out like 2 months in advance. And then those are just going out on your Instagram and your Facebook and TikTok and whatnot. And that's what Follower AI does. It helps you just create a bunch of posts and really just get your brand essence, your brand awareness out there. Monday.com, I talked about that a little bit earlier about like for the leads. That can also be, tracking leads, but it could also be for operations. You can also make a private board in there, so you can make different tasks that you're working on as a business owner, and then you could push those over to like an assistant. Once when you hire, say you hire a remote working assistant, you can then assign them like as you start getting your plate more and more full. Um, Slack is really great for just like micro communication. That's essentially like text messaging. Uh, it's a way of communicating with like different team members. Most people know what it is, but what I really like about Slack is you can create different channels in there, and that's why we like to create channels for the clients and channels for the caregivers. And people feel like that's overboard. Like, well, why do you need to have a different channel for every client or every caregiver? Well, what people don't realize in home care is there's a lot of activity that's going on with, Susie Q that's getting onboarded this week. There's a lot of stuff happening. Who's posting the ad? If we need to get one, who's sourcing the caregiver? What caregivers do we have going? What about the family? Have they been updated? Do they know when the assessment is? After the assessment's complete, is the care plan done? There's just like all this stuff that needs to be communicated. Ahead of time, like to staff the case. Once the case is staffed, then it's quality control to make sure that the family's happy with the caregiver, and that caregiver's inside of WellSky. And then there's invoicing. So like if that client is say Susie Q that's in your Slack channel, you can go in there and tag some of your remote workers that might be working on. For example, like if you're accepting long-term care insurance for that client, you might need one of your assistants to call LTC and make sure that they have all the information on behalf of your agency to accept long-term care. So, I'm kind of going down like a rabbit hole in
Yeah.
this, but I'm just explaining it because it's important that people don't realize how valuable it is, like until they start using it. Because like the alternative is you might be texting one of your assistants and then maybe put them in a group text, and all of a sudden like you guys are going in like a loop, and it gets
Yeah.
it's best to have everything in like one channel so everybody can see that feed. And then hand in hand, Loom is really nice because you can create, similar to like what this video is right now, you can create videos like this talking about a process or an update or something, and then be able to, you can even attach that link, say for your team, if you're training them on something or you want to update them on maybe a care plan, you can do like a Loom video on, okay, I went and did Susie Q's assessment today. This is what happened. Here's some things to highlight. And then you can send that off to in like the Slack channel, and or you can just message it. You don't have to use Slack, but that's just a good way of communicating and explaining your ideas and thoughts and just documenting processes and stuff. Um,
So back to Slack for a second. When you said you created a channel for each client, not that the client is using Slack, but that's the channel that you talk about that client on. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah, thank you for clarifying. Yes, so the channel is essentially, think of Slack as like your internal team. So say there's like 5 or 6 of you guys running the agency. Everybody would be, whoever's relevant to say staffing that case or hiring the caregiver will be in that channel of that client.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. But
It's
all
it's
you
yeah, it's
require
really, yeah, go ahead.
you require all your caregivers to get on Slack so you can communicate with them that way.
So you can do that if you want to set it up. You don't need to do that. When I mentioned creating different channels for your caregivers, it's actually, so yeah, let me kind of explain that. It's basically like whatever caregiver you have going on a case, this is like internally for your office team to be talking about what's happened to that caregiver. Because, for example, like Sandra, meaning your caregiver, she might call in asking about if she can get an advanced on her paycheck or something. And then
Mhm.
instead
Yeah.
of, if I get that phone call, instead of me having to call whoever's in charge of payroll, I can jump into Slack in the channel that is labeled her, and just, I don't even need to say her name because it's in her channel, and I could say at, meaning tagging the payroll person, this person called in, they're asking about their their paycheck or advance. Um, can you look into or whatever? And then when they respond back, I'm just gonna get a notice saying like, this person, like, whatever the update is, but
Yeah.
it's according to that caregiver, if that makes
I
sense.
got it. I'm glad I asked because I was thinking you're using it to communicate with the caregivers, but you're using more SMS, text to communicate with caregivers, but you're using Slack to coordinate details around caregivers and clients with your office staff.
That's exactly what it is. Yes, you
Got it.
explained it a little better there. Yeah, that's what it is. So,
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's go and dive into the deep dark hole of WellSky. So there's a lot going on here, but I tried to capture kind of like the big things, right? Like obviously it's a place that's going to track all your caregivers and clients, but from a caregiver perspective, they're using it. There's a mobile app. They're using to check in, check out, leave care notes, and for the clients you're able to send them schedules, invoices, care notes, all that kind of stuff to the clients and the client's family. And then move that data into QuickBooks for your financial reporting and into bands of bands for payroll. I mean, those are the big functions that I'm aware of. What else would you kind of lay on to the top of that?
so like WellSky, as far as, there's a portal called a Family Cares portal that is linked inside of WellSky. Not all families want to use it, but it's really nice because the invoices of the POA, meaning like the power of attorney that's in charge of the family's care, they can have access to log in. They can see the schedule of which caregiver is showing up, if they're clocked in, if they miss clock out, like everything that shows up. Because like the way WellSky works is, and we could do a whole nother video on this, but when a caregiver misses a clock in or clock out, the schedule goes red. If they're there, it's yellow. If they're scheduled, it's blue. If there's nobody scheduled and it's an open shift, meaning there's no caregiver ready to go on that shift yet, but you're looking for the caregiver, it's purple, which means like just open shift. And the family can see that when they log into their portal. They can also see the invoices as well. So like they can download the invoices, they could pay right online. So it just makes things a lot more transparent and easier to use. And then with your accounts receivable, you can export that. um, so when the invoice gets paid, you can push that off to QuickBooks for your like company internal financial accounting.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we could do a whole nother video, do some screen sharing and stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
think those are the big kind of features and functions that are important here.
Huh?
Trying to think if does I guess, so the caregiver's hours are going to be tracked in WellSky and then moved to bands of hands. But is this office staff, if they're using bands of hands, I guess they're going to record their hours directly in their local staff if they're not on Upwork. Is that right?
Yeah, really good question. So the way it works is every caregiver that clocks in and out, it's a timekeeping system inside of WellSky as well. So it's up to whoever is your case manager or scheduler, staffing coordinator to make sure that all of those schedules are accurate each week. Say by Sunday at midnight. We recommend invoicing each Monday so that week prior the schedule should be all green, which means this that's the one I meant to mention. That's the completed shift. So if it's a completed shift and it's accurate, then that's been like confirmed that that shift actually happened. And then once when payroll comes along, then you can export that information off to, if you're using ADP, there's a way to export it. If you're using bands of hands, you can actually download it in an XLS format, and then you just upload it in your bands of hands portal, and then they take care of it.
Okay.
You
But
upload the hours, yeah.
in terms of your, not your VAs, because we're going to manage those through Upwork, but your local office staff, would they just record hours directly into bands of hands? Because they're not recording hours in WellSky.
They can record hours. Some of like the way that I did it at Golden Age Companions is I had people like honestly I was pretty simple with it. I just had a handful of office stuff, so I had them just record it in a Google Sheet and
Hmm.
just that's how I did it. And then I actually had an assistant that was verifying the schedules each week that that person was in the office, and then that got exported to, in this case, bands of hands, or that those hours get imported into ADP,
ADP.
which is
Yeah.
technically manual. So I know ADP has a timekeeping app that say your office staff can download and they can clock in and out on that app. That's how I'd recommend doing it. I believe Bands of Hands has a way of doing timekeeping in their portal. From what I understand, I think they have the same thing.
Yeah, I think they do. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
missing anything?
Let's see. Yeah, I love this chart. It's like really well written, and I hope people get a lot of value out of this too, because it's I'm a very visual person too. So I like to see, like everything in a 30,000 foot view type of thing. I don't know. I think we really covered everything really well. I'm just checking referral sources, caregiver details. Yeah, I mean, this essentially is the entire ecosystem of a home care business. This is like kind of like the bread and butter of what I learned over a decade on how to, because like when I started Golden Age Companions, I didn't have anything like this even to refer to. So I had some paperwork, basically like a client assessment paperwork and caregiver onboarding stuff and what to ask caregivers, but I didn't really like have any type of system like this. So this took me like, and I trial and errored a lot of this stuff. So like I used WellSky for a long time, but then as we got for like lead generation or for a CRM. So then I realized it was inefficient over time, especially after I hired remote workers. I wanted to have a way of tracking these people, and then that's why I added in Slack. For Dialpad, we probably changed our VOIP system maybe 7 or 8 times before Dialpad was like the winner. A lot of beware of some other VOIPs. The quality is not always there. It might be a cheaper one, it might be just different, but the quality is not always, like the phone could be cutting out or whatever. The service is dropping or you're not getting notifications. So I found that Dialpad really worked the best when it came to, like I said, I tried so many of them that were just like a flop. Um, yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest kind of thing here is Monday's probably like the optional. Everything else you really like need. Monday can be implemented at a later date, as you have more and more leads that you're tracking, because you can start out by putting prospects inside of WellSky. The only thing I will say is definitely be ahead of the curve, meaning don't wait until you have 500 or 600 prospects over time that now you have to figure out a way to track all this data and follow up with these people.
Yeah.
Um, I just remembered like another alternative to Monday.com could be Go High Level. That is we never used it for Golden Age, but I recently discovered them like in this past year. And that the only strength that Go High Level has that I really like is a way of setting up like an email campaign for your prospects. So like you can do like um, like a drip campaign when they inquire. And, Monday has a version of that, but yeah, like if you do use Monday, you can always add in like MailChimp or something and then just integrate it inside of Monday. So, yeah, you did a
You
really
just
good
gave me a
job though.
great idea. You just gave me a great idea because Kajabi has a way to track contacts and do drip campaigns as well. So
So
maybe I
yeah,
should look.
Kajabi is a really amazing tool too. I mean, that's what we host, our home care agency blueprint course inside of Kajabi. So yeah,
Yeah,
we love Kajabi. They work really well. So,
cool.
yeah.
Well, that's all I got for now. Of course, all these things cost money, so you got to go look at that aspect of it too and figure out when it makes sense to bring it on board.
Exactly. It does all add up. It's important to bring it on as you are getting bigger and just make sure that you're not signing up for too many softwares ahead of time because then you're just going to have these monthly fees. I would say the most necessary softwares that you really, really like need up front when getting started for a home care agency are WellSky. You like that's like and that's under $200 a month for the first 20 clients. I know that with home care agency blueprint, we have like a preferred system with them where like any client that we sign up through our blueprint program, they give 3 months free, which is nice. Gets people off the ground.
Yeah.
And it could be even post licensing. So you can get access to WellSky. And then as soon as you input that very first client, then you have 3 months, so 90 days, which is really nice, that you don't have to pay anything. And
First
then,
active client, right?
yeah,
Because they have a prospect client designator as well,
that's
right?
exactly. So anybody that you add in as a prospect, they don't charge you for, and then every active client, essentially that's either on schedule or they're living in the database as an active client. That's $10 per client per month. WellSky did update their pricing. So it used to be $10. Well, the original that's through Blueprint, it's $10, but um what they advertise is $12 per month per client, but they have a cap. So like the minimum now monthly fee is $200 a month, whether you have two active clients or three or whatever. Um,
That
that's what
makes sense.
they charge. So it used to be that when Golden Age Companions had them 10 years ago, we had two clients, it was $20, So it was like we didn't have to, and they changed that. And I just realized that about last week. They just let me know because I lit them up about it. Like, wait a minute, I thought that so they're like, yeah, we actually changed our pricing. So that's a new thing. The other necessary software is a VOIP, so whether that's Dialpad, um, website's not a software, but of course you got to have your website. Hireology, you won't need to get Hireology until later. This is an important thing to mention. That is $249 a month for 6 months. I would recommend, just posting like a la carte job postings online with other platforms. Even if you use like LinkedIn or um there's some other like you could pay like $40 or $50 for like one posting just to get something up there if you want to just like start like vetting caregivers. And then as you have some clients come in and then get Hireology, or you can sign up for Hireology, just start getting some job postings up there, get that energy out there that you're already hiring for a bunch of clients. And there's a good chance you're going to start getting clients in, but just be aware of like if you don't have any clients coming in yet and you have this Hireology platform that you're paying for, um, that's just something, it's just a balancing act, but that's
Mm.
just up to you on like a lot of our students are like nurses or they work in the medical or healthcare field, or they already have a lot of connections, and they literally can pick up the phone and start getting referrals like almost right away when they get their license approved. And so with them, I say get Hireology right away.
Yeah.
So
Well, and if you don't get right away, I think Indeed is probably one of the better job sites, right? And
Indeed's really
what was
great.
it? My CMA Jobs.
Yeah, my CNA Jobs is a whole nother job posting platform. They're about for the most recent pricing. This is basically beginning of 2024 that I know of is 425 a month, and essentially they have like I want to say over 100,000 caregivers in their platform, and they only have caregivers, and you can post jobs in there. I find that their job posting isn't as good as Hireology. The beauty that they have that's really nice is you start to scale and grow. And this is something that we teach in our program as, you know, our students are getting 20, 30, 40, 50 clients. They need to hire even more caregivers, and even the job posting isn't like, you know, like they just want to vet more people. We say to sign up for My City Jobs also. You'll have enough revenue coming in where you could pay for that too. And that's how Golden Age was set up. We had Hireology and My CNA Jobs. The best thing about My CNA Jobs is they have a thing called marketplace search. So you can actually put in a zip code of the like area that you want to source that caregiver and the mile radius, and then filter the search, and it'll actually pull up um you know, like hundreds of caregivers that are in that area that live like within that, you know, like maybe they speak a certain language or they live within 5 miles of the client's house. Maybe they
Nice.
CNA and whatnot. And then in the way my CNA Jobs works is like for that 425 a month, they give you something like 350 profile views. So like what we would do is we would literally just, I mean, how I used it is I would when it get close to the end of the month where we've only viewed maybe 40 or 50 views because we just didn't use it much. To use up the rest of those views, I would just like put in like say, you know, in Irvine, California, or you know, maybe an area that we need to source caregivers like Riverside. I would put in like maybe 10 or 15 miles, and then just download all of those caregivers, like 100 of them at a time, to use up those views, and then I'd put those in a separate like Google Doc to refer to. So that's where my remote worker would then, I would say, okay, this is a 15-mile radius of all these caregivers. Go ahead and get on the phone or text them and call them and see if they're looking for a job or looking for work. And we got you know, people applying that way too. So that's
Hmm.
something that I learned over ever like years of doing this.
So, but my CMA Jobs 425, about
Yeah,
$425. Wow, that's pretty expensive then, huh?
it is. They might have a starter plan, but no, I think that yeah, I mean there is a chance that they do like a little like a $300 a month plan, but I remember the 425 to get that marketplace search tool, which is the most valuable, you have to pay at least that. So,
Okay, so that probably kicks into gear when you're a little more, when you grow a little bit. So start out like with maybe Indeed, random posting, manual postings, then get Hireology, then My CNA Jobs. At that point, you're paying hundreds of dollars a month for these different platforms, right?
yeah, exactly. Sometimes thousands. You know,
Yeah.
but I mean if you're bringing in, I mean, at one point, Golden Age, we were doing around like 240,000 a month revenue. So like when you're spending 3 or 4,000 a month on different softwares, if you're using all of them, and they're benefiting and growing the business, it's worth it, you know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But we got to walk before we run, right? So,
Exactly. And even then, just because bringing that much revenue doesn't mean you just spend the money on softwares. Like if you're only using, you know, like the 80/20 rule type of thing, like if there's a software that's costing you 400 or 500, like there was a while that we were paying for my CNA Jobs and we weren't using it for like months, but we were bringing the revenue, but we weren't really using it. And we're in an agreement. That's the only thing with them is they do require a 1 year commitment, and it's just like, you know, if you're just like, okay, we don't need this right now, then like there's nothing you could do about it. So
yeah. Yeah.
but anyway, it's all good stuff. Thank God we have all these resources because it just makes running a home care agency a lot easier. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we covered a lot of ground here, and yeah, we probably need to do another one on WellSky when I get set up in there. We can do a demo on
yeah.
that. Awesome. Thanks, Scott,
Good.
for
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter, for connecting today. And thank you, everybody, for watching. If you are interested in starting up or scaling your current home care agency, please click in the link in the description below. There's my direct Calendly link on booking a call with me and my team, and we can talk to you about, we do like a free consultation to see if it's a good fit to get you set up. And if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you feel like you're getting value out of our my videos here. So thanks again, and I'll see you guys on the next video.